This bone fragment was smaller than a child's, but it belonged to a fully grown adult. And what it revealed about the smallest humans who ever lived would terrify scientists around the world. 6 meters beneath the limestone cave floor on the remote island of Flores. Something impossible waited in the darkness. But before we reveal what made that tiny bone so terrifying, you need to know about the discovery that started it all. September 6, 2003. Benjamin Terrace was about to make a find so shocking that scientists would spend the next 2 decades arguing about whether it was even possible. The tropical afternoon heat pressed down on Liang Bua Cave as this Indonesian archaeologist scraped away another layer of ancient sediment. He had been digging this 2-meter square for weeks, descending deeper into geological time with each careful stroke of his trowel. The team was actually preparing to close the excavation when Terrace hit something hard. A piece of skull emerged from the earth. At first, everyone assumed it belonged to a child. The brain case was so small, so delicate, that no adult human could possibly fit inside. But as the team carefully exposed more of the skull over the following days, something disturbing became clear. The teeth weren't baby teeth. They were fully developed, permanent adult teeth. This was no child. This was a grown woman, and she was impossibly small. When the excavation was complete, the skeleton revealed a human being unlike any other. She stood barely 3 feet tall. Her brain was the size of a large orange, smaller than a chimpanzee's. Yet scattered around her bones were sophisticated stone tools and the butchered remains of dwarf elephants she had hunted. The scientific world erupted in controversy. How could something so small with such a tiny brain be capable of making tools and organizing hunts? The skeleton was so extraordinary that many experts refused to believe it represented a new species at all. But LB1, as she came to be known, was just the beginning. But here's what nobody tells you about where these tiny humans lived. Imagine waking up every day knowing that stepping outside your cave meant facing creatures that could kill you in seconds. This wasn't some peaceful island paradise. This was a death trap where evolution had created monsters. Giant rats the size of dogs scurried through forests alongside monitor lizards longer than crocodiles. Komodo dragons, Earth's largest living lizards, stalked prey with venomous bites. And in this land of giants lived the smallest humans ever to walk the planet. The woman we call LB1 lived in a world that would terrify modern humans. Komodo dragons 10 feet long shared her caves and hunting grounds. These weren't the sluggish reptiles tourists see today, but apex predators capable of bringing down water buffalo. Their bones litter the same cave layers where LB1's people lived, suggesting an uneasy coexistence between the smallest humans and largest lizards. Yet somehow, these tiny humans thrived. They made elegant stone tools, organized group hunts, and survived in this dangerous ecosystem for hundreds of thousands of years. They developed techniques for hunting stegodon, relatives of elephants that had also shrunk on the isolated island, but still stood twice the height of their human hunters. LB1's people, dubbed Homo floresiensis, but nicknamed hobbits after Tolkien's fictional characters, represented something unprecedented in human evolution. Never before had scientists discovered humans so small yet so capable, but the mystery of their origins remained unsolved. Where did they come from? How did they become so small? And perhaps most intriguingly, were they always this tiny? The story that emerged from these fossil fragments read like science fiction, yet the evidence was undeniable. Around 1 million years ago, a group of Homo erectus had somehow crossed the treacherous waters separating Indonesia's islands from the mainland. These weren't sophisticated ocean-going vessels they used, but likely accidental journeys on natural rafts of vegetation torn loose by storms. The survivors who washed ashore on Flores found themselves trapped on an island with limited resources and no large predators to fear. In such environments, evolution favors smaller body sizes. Less food is needed to survive. Reproduction can occur earlier. Energy isn't wasted maintaining unnecessarily large frames. Here's the crazy part that blew scientists' minds. Normally, when animals get stranded on islands, they shrink slowly over hundreds of thousands of years. Think of it like a diet that takes forever to work. But these humans? They basically went from NBA player height to toddler size in what, evolutionarily speaking, was like losing weight overnight. The Hobbit's transformation was extraordinary even by these standards. Starting from ancestors who likely stood 5.5 feet tall, they had shrunk to barely 3 feet in what appears to be a remarkably short evolutionary time span. The Matamenga discoveries revealed that this dramatic size reduction occurred within the first 300,000 years of their island existence. Then, astonishingly, they maintained these tiny proportions for at least 600,000 more years without further change. But why such extreme miniaturization? The answer lay in the unique challenges of their island home. Flores was no tropical paradise. This volcanic island, with its limited freshwater sources and seasonal food shortages, demanded adaptations that pushed the boundaries of what it meant to be human. For the Hobbits, being small wasn't just an advantage, it was essential for survival. Think about this for a second. While our ancestors needed massive amounts of food and space, these tiny humans had basically hacked survival. Dense forests that would trap you or me? They could slip through like shadows. Famine that would kill larger humans? They just needed a fraction of the food to survive. Their reduced body mass meant they could support larger populations in areas with limited resources. Every aspect of their biology had been optimized for their specific environment. Yet despite their small brains, these people were remarkably sophisticated. The stone tools found at both Matamenga and Liangbua demonstrate complex planning and technical skill. They weren't simple hand axes, but carefully crafted implements designed for specific tasks: cutting wood, processing plant fibers, butchering meat. The evidence suggests they organized group hunts for stegodon, requiring coordination and communication between multiple individuals. They may have used fire, though this evidence remains debated. They certainly processed their kills efficiently, leaving behind precisely cut bone fragments that speak to detailed knowledge of anatomy. Most remarkably, they accomplished all of this with brains 1/3 the size of modern human brains. For nearly 1 million years, the Hobbits ruled their island domain. Generation after generation adapted to Flores' unique challenges, maintaining their tiny stature while developing increasingly sophisticated survival strategies. They were living proof that human success didn't require large bodies or massive brains. But here's where the story takes a dark turn that'll make you question everything about human nature. After nearly 1 million years of successful survival, something happened that wiped these incredible people off the face of the earth in just a few thousand years. And the timing of their disappearance points to one terrifying possibility. The timing coincides with the arrival of modern humans in Southeast Asia. Our ancestors had developed boat-building technologies sophisticated enough to cross the water barriers that had isolated Flores for millions of years. Within a few thousand years of modern human arrival in the region, the Hobbits were gone. Whether our species directly caused their extinction remains unknown. No evidence of warfare or conflict has been found. Instead, the Hobbits may have fallen victim to the diseases modern humans carried, or been outcompeted for the same resources. They might have been absorbed through interbreeding, though no genetic evidence of this has been discovered. The final layers of Liangbua Cave tell a simple story. First Hobbit bones and tools, then volcanic ash from a massive eruption, then modern human artifacts. The smallest humans ever to live had been replaced by the most successful. But the Hobbit story isn't over. In fact, what scientists discovered next would prove that these tiny humans were just the tip of an iceberg that completely changes how we think about what it means to be human. The discovery of Homo floresiensis forced scientists to reconsider fundamental assumptions about human evolution. We had always assumed that bigger brains led to greater intelligence, that larger bodies indicated evolutionary success, that our particular path to humanity was inevitable. The Hobbits proved otherwise. They demonstrated that intelligence could flourish in unexpected forms, that success could be measured in survival rather than size, that the human story was far more complex and wonderful than we had imagined. Recent discoveries have only deepened these insights. In 2019, scientists announced another small-bodied human species, Homo luzonensis, from the Philippines. These people were even smaller than the hobbits, suggesting that island dwarfism may have been a common strategy for early humans who reached Southeast Asia's isolated islands. The DNA studies that might answer remaining questions about the hobbits' relationships to other human species remain elusive. The tropical climate of Flores has destroyed any genetic material that might have been preserved in their bones. They remain mysterious, known only through the stones they shaped and the bones they left behind. Today, tourists can visit Liang Bua Cave and peer into the excavation pits where the hobbits once lived. Local legends speak of small forest people called Ebu Gogo, who lived alongside human communities until recent times. Whether these stories preserve actual memories of encounters with the last hobbits or represent separate traditions remains unknown. The cave itself continues to yield secrets. Each excavation season brings new fossil fragments, new stone tools, new insights into how these remarkable people lived. The current inhabitants of Flores, including the Rampasasa people who are notably small in stature themselves, have no genetic connection to the ancient hobbits. Their size appears to be a separate adaptation to similar environmental pressures. Meanwhile, the search for other small-bodied human species continues across Southeast Asia's thousands of islands. Each remote location might harbor its own chapter in humanity's diverse evolutionary story. Each excavation might uncover evidence of other paths our ancestors took in response to isolation and environmental challenge. The Hobbit story reminds us that human evolution was never a simple progression from small to large, primitive to advanced. Instead, it was an explosion of diversity, with different populations finding radically different solutions to the challenge of survival. In a world where modern humans have grown taller and heavier with each generation, where we equate size with success and complexity with intelligence, the smallest humans who ever lived offer a humbling reminder. They survived nearly 1 million years in one of Earth's most challenging environments. They developed technologies, organized societies, and carved out a successful existence with tools we might consider primitive and bodies we might consider inadequate. So here's what keeps me up at night thinking about these tiny humans. They survived nearly 1 million years in hell on Earth with brains the size of oranges and bodies smaller than modern 10-year-olds. Which makes me wonder, what does that say about us? What would we be capable of if we faced the same impossible odds? They were masters of a world where being small was the ultimate evolutionary advantage. And in their tiny bones lies proof that the human story is far from over, that evolution continues to surprise us, and that sometimes the most profound discoveries come in the smallest packages. The last echoes of their stone tools have fallen silent in Liang Bua Cave. But the questions they raised about what it means to be human continue to reshape our understanding of our own extraordinary journey through time.